What is going on, Dolphins fans? Jacob here, Miami Dolphins Syndicate. So, training camp fully underway now. Donovan got to go to one of the practices. I have not quite yet got to go. Planning on probably going to maybe one, maybe two. If I don't go to any, I'm not really too concerned. I'm kind of worn out, in fact, from going to the practices because last 3 years I went to literally as many as I could. This year, not as big of a concern for me to go to the practices. I feel pretty good as I understand what this team is and what this team is going to be good at, what this team is going to be bad at. And focusing a little bit more, unfortunately, on the bad today, the biggest position of concern that I have with going into the 2024 season for the Miami Dolphins is, I think, undoubtedly the center position. While we for sure have lost countless players on the defensive side of the ball, I'm not sure if one specific spot concerns me on defense as much as it does center on the offensive side. The defensive line and the offensive line in general are definitely major concerns, especially on the defensive side going into the season. You know you're not going to have Chubb. You know you're not going to have Phillips. You know that you no longer have Christian Wilkins. So that defensive line, especially for the first 4 to maybe 6 weeks, month and a half, 2 months into the season, is for sure going to be a massive area for cause for concern those first few weeks for the Dolphins. But just season long in general, I don't like how the center position is scoping out for the Dolphins. So we just look at training camp today. I'm recording this on June 30th, and there were tweets put out today by Dolphins beat writers talking about how there were struggles by all 3 members of the Miami Dolphins offensive line that participated at center. I'm not sure if it's all 3, but these are the 3 ones that were listed. You can see on your screen as well as the day before, Donovan got to go to the camp, and he was texting me about how not just the center position, but the offensive line looked terrible in general. And that center position is going to rely on Aaron Brewer. It's probably going to be Brewer or Liam Eichenberg that gets a start there. Didn't see Eichenberg noted in those tweets that you guys on the screen a moment ago, but it's probably going to be Aaron Brewer. Eichenberg's a guy who's going to be plugged and played around the offensive line, depending on injuries. But Brewer's probably going to get that start at the center position. And from a run perspective, he actually was really good last year for the Tennessee Titans, a Titans offensive line that pretty much all metrics had them rating bottom of the 10 in the entire NFL in terms of their offensive line rankings. However, the one thing that he did do well was participate in the run game, and that is certainly something the Dolphins are going to need from their offensive line, losing their 2 best offensive linemen. Of course, Connor Williams with the torn ACL. He's still on the market. We'll see what happens with him. I wouldn't be surprised if once he's fully healthy, when the team can then bring him in and not have to rehab him himself, have him taking up a roster spot, not have to pay him to be rehabbing in the building. And once he's ready to go, I can see the team certainly bringing him back in. And then, of course, Robert Hunt, who signs with the Carolina Panthers for that big contract. 2 incredible players on the offensive line when it comes to the run game. Aaron Brewer does excel at that. However, when it comes to pass blocking, that is certainly something where Aaron Brewer starts to see a little bit of fall off. You look in the month of December, he led the league in pressures allowed for quarterbacks, and then second most sacks allowed from center. So 2 massive parts of the offense being able to facilitate. For one, just the quarterback being alive and upright in the pocket, not feeling the pressure, and the interior of the offense or interior of the defensive line has over recent years been almost just as much of a deterrent to the passing game as the outside has. You look over the course of recent history, and it's about paying the quarterbacks, paying guys that you can get the ball to as a quarterback, pay the guys that are protecting the quarterback, and then paying the guys that can get to the other team's quarterback. And generally, when you think about that, you're thinking about it from an edge perspective. You're looking at the Bosas. You're looking at the Myles Garretts. You're looking at some of the best edge rushers in the NFL. However, the interior can be just as disruptive, which we've seen from our own Christian Wilkins, which we've seen from Chris Jones over the Kansas City Chiefs. That ability to attack from within can be just as, and maybe even for this Dolphins offense, even more of a problem than dealing with the edge rushers. Last year, we had a rotating door at left tackle because of Teron Armstead's injuries, and I saw more of an impact of losing a member of the offensive line when we lost in the interior of the offensive line. And to be fair, from the interior offensive line, we lost a whole bunch of guys, and that was a rotating door unto itself. Just those inward 3, except for Robert Hunt, mostly the left guard and the center, were a rotating door for most of the season. However, I saw more of a drop-off when Connor Williams went down as opposed to when Teron Armstead went down. The ability to get the ball to Tua and get the ball out of his hands quickly seemed like it relied more on the interior of the line holding up than the outside of the line holding up. You had a solidified right side of the line where you have Tua's blind spot with Austin Jackson and Robert Hunt. Jackson coming off one of his best seasons as a pro. Robert Hunt was our most consistent offensive lineman, not just last year, but really for the last few years. Of course, you lose him, and you look on the left side, Armstead, his injuries, left guard, their injuries, but Connor Williams at center. When he went down, that was, I really think, the turning point in the season. You can look at multiple guys that got hurt. You specifically look at the edge positions, losing both top guys, both Pro Bowl talent guys at the edge position. You look at Jalen Waddle, who got hurt. You look at we didn't have Jalen Ramsey till about halfway through the season. But I think the real pivotal switch in the season was when we had to go from Connor Williams to Eichenberg. And Connor Williams unto himself is not a perfect center, as that isn't even the position he preferred to play. He was more of a guard than a center. His struggles certainly were getting to the ball, which as a center, massive problem. You need to, your first area of importance as a center is getting the ball to your quarterback. But once he did that, he was nothing short of excellent. He could stand up, just guard the interior of the line. He could pull as a center, which how often do you see that? How many guys as a center are pulling? You're looking at Kelsey, you're looking at Connor Williams, you're looking at maybe a few other top guys. But you can swing a guard, you can swing a tackle, but the Dolphins were swinging Connor Williams, especially you look at those plays to the outside with Devon Achane, with Raheem Mostert, as we didn't really look to the interior of the offensive line to hold up for those rushing attack plays as much as other teams maybe would. But the ability to get out wide after the snap and play your position post-snap was crucial. And Anthony Brewer certainly excels at that, but I do have my question marks when it comes to the passing game and what we saw from him last year in Tennessee and what we've seen from him having those same issues getting the ball to Tua, Mike White, Skylar Thompson, so far the practices, the guys behind him as well. In the center position, certainly, cause for concern, but the offensive line in general, I don't think we've really come to realize how much worse this offensive line probably is going to be. You have Isaiah Wynn hopefully coming back and playing as he did before he went down with his season-ending injury. Teron Armstead is, fingers crossed, you get 13 games out of Teron Armstead. Yeah, I would take that. I would break your hand right now, shaking your hand for Teron Armstead playing 13 games as a Dolphin this year. Austin Jackson on the right. However, those two pieces of Hunt and Williams, I think losing those two are going to prove even more detrimental than if we lost Teron Armstead. I would rather have Connor and Robert Hunt, because that interior offensive line with a smaller quarterback like Tua, if you're able to blind the vision, if you're able to clog the middle of the field where Tua is such an anticipation thrower, throws with accuracy, feel comfortable throwing over the middle of the field because he's confident in his receivers to be where they're supposed to be. However, if you have that line of vision massively blocked off, and Aaron Brewer allowed a lot of that to Ryan Tannehill earlier in the season last year, Will Levis eventually later on this season, the pressures, the sacks from the interior of the offensive line, as well as he's now apparently, as well as the rest of the centers, having just issues getting to the ball. That is something that's cause for concern as to how this offense is going to be able to operate at its best capacity, at its most intensity, because it's a team that relies on speed, anticipation, guys that in Tua that isn't the most athletic, it doesn't have the biggest arm in the world, but is relying on the guys on the outside to be open, including guys from in the backfield to be open, to be able to utilize their speed and athleticism. But if you're able to disrupt that at the point of attack before the ball can even get out of Tua's hands, I think the biggest way to affect this offense is to do it just straight up the middle. Don't give any room, don't give any alley for Tua to step into, to step away from. It's easier to do that when you're pushing from the edge, step into the pocket, step up to the left, step up to the right. But when you're facing the defense head on and you have these 300+ pound dudes charging directly at you, that disrupts the vision, that disrupts the timing, and somebody with Tua who doesn't have the ability to really make a play with his feet, you then have a dead play, and you don't have the confidence of throwing it up to guys. You don't have the biggest body receivers, tight ends, the best, most reliable tight ends in the league, that you feel like, okay, if they're in the general area, they can go make a play. We have seen our guys do that, but the one weakness of the team is you don't have a bigger body, sure hands guy to go up and get a ball. So the center position is massive for the success of the Miami Dolphins this year, and I do not believe we have the guys at the center position to really even look a semblance of what we had last year for Connor Williams. The interior of the offensive line likely will be a problem this year. We've seen the Miami Dolphins, we've seen Mike McDaniel take less and build more out of it. And certainly over the last couple of years, especially with the injuries to Armstead, especially with playing a center out of position, I'd say the Dolphins did very well over the last 2 years to really build up the offensive line. However, now losing Hunt, now losing Williams, again, we'll see what happens. Maybe there's a door left open for him if he is able to come back from that injury. But I certainly have my doubts with Aaron Brewer and whoever else is going to be at center, as well as I do have my concerns for right next to him to his right, what that position is going to look like. But just for now, center position, I'd say, is my biggest concern right now in training camp based off reports and based off eye tests, based off numbers. Just it doesn't make sense that the Dolphins will find a lot of success from Aaron Brewer or whoever else ends up playing center. Are you guys concerned about it as me? Let me know down below in the comments. Are you excited about training camp? Are you excited about the season being right around the corner? Again, let us know down below. Well, down there. Hit that like button. Hit that sub button. Appreciate y'all very much for watching. Have a great rest of your day.